Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. Today we have Thomas Mitchell with us. He's not only the Atlanta chapter lead, but also UiPath MVP 2022. And he is currently working at Welcomely as a delivery lead for UiPath solution. Hey Thomas, welcome to my channel today.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right. I think what separates Thomas apart from the people I have met is that no matter about his position, but he has been so down to earth. And I was so, like when I approached him, it was so easy to talk to him. So this is one of the feature I love about him. How was your journey for UiPath MVP 2022, Thomas?
Yes, so thanks for asking. The journey for UiPath MVP was, it was definitely an interesting process, right? So we start off with sort of a technical interview, technical assessment, online quiz, and then from there we move into an interview portion where they sort of evaluate what you've been bringing to the UiPath community and how you're influencing others around you to use UiPath and learn about UiPath and
Right. No, that sounds pretty interesting. So you mentioned that we have technical assessment and also technical interview. So was it product specific or it was for UiPath as a whole?
right. So they ask you what UiPath products are you interested in. So you can specialize in studio products, or you can specialize in apps, or all the other services that UiPath offers. If you're interested in data services or Studio Web, they ask you what you specialize in, or Studio X. And then from there, you sort of jump into a roundtable interview with the product owners at UiPath, and they just ask you for your feedback, and they learn more about your expertise on the product.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So, you also mentioned that they are also, checking or rather validating how much influence are you creating in the community. So, what did you do differently that, made you UiPath MVP, apart from your technical knowledge, of course?
Sure, sure. So as far as what I did, I got my start with a company called Rebelio that I introduced a knowledge sharing initiative, which was an internal initiative for approaching new topics and new features about UiPath. And so once a week we met, all the development team, which at the time was about 60 to 70 people, and went over new products. And so I was part of the organizing committee for that. I also participated in the 2021 UiPath Hackathon event. And so my team came first place in that. Also participating on forums and, just sharing your knowledge with the community.
Oh, that
And
sounds interesting. And let's not forget that you are also an Atlanta chapter lead. So, as a chapter lead, what are the contributions that you make? Is it only your responsibility to organize events or to get people along, or as a chapter lead, you have some other responsibilities?
right. So as a chapter leader, we, like you said, organize events. We contact guest speakers. We bring them in. We try to come up with interesting topics. And it's all about the community, right? We want to create a discussion around UiPath. We want to present on the topics that you are interested in, right? So that's, our goal as a community leader is to, get to know the community and find out what you're missing, and then, try to expand on that.
That seems interesting. So one thing I was just wondering, is it really necessary to run the race for the UiPath MVP? Like, what difference does this tag bring along in your life? Does it actually create a difference, or would you recommend people to go ahead and participate, nominate themselves for this whole UiPath MVP event? What do you think?
Right. Yeah. So the MVP process has been entitled as an honor for me to get. Just as I was getting my start in UiPath, I worked with small businesses and learned, in my nights and weekends UiPath. And so, I spent many time on the forums and learned from the people that were sharing their knowledge there. So I felt like an MVP was an opportunity for me to give back to the community that really encouraged me along the way. And so it's opened a lot of doors for me as far as like getting to know the UiPath product owners, understanding what goes into UiPath, and they listen to our struggles as MVPs and the community, and they want to take those and solve those problems. So it's really been an eye-opening experience as far as we participated in the UiPath MVP Summit in Seattle this year. And we met with a bunch of different product owners, and they listened to our feedback, and it was really encouraging to see where the platform's headed.
Wow, that's great. So, I know that for a fact, if you want to learn ahead, ahead in time for the UiPath products, we have something called as UiPath Insider Program, where I would subscribe to a product and, any new reformation that's coming in or there is new addition, I actually get to access it beforehand, before it goes public. So as a UiPath MVP, do you have access to, certain resources that are not given to public yet? I mean, sorry, uh, do you have access to resources that has not gone public yet, or do you have any extra, I would say, privilege?
Sure, good question. So we have access to an enterprise license in Orchestrator and all the UiPath products there. So we do have access to that. But as far as like the insider program, that's open to anybody that wants to provide their feedback. So yeah, that's we. As far as special privileges, we have the enterprise license that we can use through the MVP program. But other than that, we are just contributing to the community as we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now we have discussed the whole journey. So how much time would, right from the nomination of UiPath MVP until the results are declared? Like what, how much duration would it be, approximately? Would it be like 3 months, or how does the time fly?
Right. So they start the interview process in November, December timeframe, and then they release the winners in February. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, but it's certainly an anticipated wait.
Absolutely. And apart from the product knowledge, is there anything else that you need to prepare beforehand, or you need to think about, or you need to learn about?
Right. I think being an MVP is really showing and demonstrating your passion for the UiPath product, and where the ecosystem is headed is something that UiPath has fostered from the very beginning, is that community driven involvement. And so we're trying to encourage others constantly to get involved in UiPath, pick it up and learn it. Myself, I don't necessarily come from a technical background, and so having those resources of the community online has really been what's sort of the make it or break it moment for me, right?
That's right. That's right. Okay, I would ask one biased question. I hope we don't be politically correct about it. So, which is your favorite UiPath product, and something that you are passionate about, just like you said right now?
Right. So obviously UiPath Studio is the bread and butter, but I've really had a chance to work with UiPath apps, and it's come a long way from its inception. And they're adding functionality to it constantly. So I think it's definitely, if you haven't taken the time to pick it up and build an app, certainly go out and do that.
That's absolutely right. Like it has come way further from the time it was, from the time of its inception. I completely agree with you. And so for, before you started the whole RPA journey, what made you trigger and think that, RPA is the new norm? And if you use any training website or, any other training material that you would love to recommend to our audience?
Right. Obviously, the academy is where I started. So I took the certification, the developer path, and did the level 1 training and then the advanced training, and then I got my UIRD certification. So that's where I started. But again, like I said, anytime I'm looking for a solution, I start with the forums.
No, that's very true that the UiPath community forum is super active. So whenever we post question, we definitely get a response. May not be certain questions that are trickier, We may not get response immediately from the community, but at least from the UiPath people themselves. So that is my own personal experience. And yep, UiPath community is actually a stronger family I have seen.
So for the, I'll say, don't be afraid to post a question on the forums. I mean, you're bound to get an answer of some kind, right? And so, I did an experiment with one of my community Atlanta chapter meetings where I posted a question at the beginning of the meeting and actually had an answer to it by the end of it. So, use those resources.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And I just had one more thing to ask about. So basically, you are heading the UiPath delivery at Welcome Lead right now. So what is your go-to mantra, or I would say, which is one principle that you would blindly follow and make sure that this is the perfect way to deliver the services?
Great question. Honestly, I have to say that I have two of them. So first off, I'm going to say, don't forget that to use the reframework and the exception handling that's built into that, because a lot of times our goal for these automations is to, deliver an 80% automation rate. So, we're not necessarily trying to fine tune it to meet every possible business scenario, but if we can automate 80% of the tasks, that's our goal, right? And we can always add on to that later. Um, Secondly, I'd like to say, don't forget to spend the time doing design and testing, because you're going to save yourself a headache and time in the long run by spending a couple extra hours doing those design and testing before you release it to production.
Wow, that's actually a very valid point. Like being a program manager myself, I could confirm this that our goal is to make sure that we deliver automation, but let's not overpromise. If you are delivering whatever you promise, that's great. In case if you think that there is a scope of more automation or you can bring in more value add, you can always do that later. So take up that task, make sure that this is 101% doable, and like Thomas mentioned, that let's not forget designing and testing. I feel that yes, it's 101% correct. One tip from my end, requirement gathering also is one of the most important, I would say, phase of delivery. Being into management for so many years, this is one piece people, try to negotiate the timelines with. They're like, just collect the requirements in a hurry up mode, and then boom. While you're trying to design, you lose out on the requirements of your automation task. So a very valid point. Focus on design, focus on testing. While testing, do you maintain any matrix or tracker? Is there any go-to Excel sheet format that you kind of refer to, Thomas?
Right. So we want to make sure that we're always testing every business scenario that we can come across, right? So application exceptions are going to be handled by the RE framework, but business exceptions are something that we obviously have to define when we're gathering those requirements. So I try to make sure that every possible path of the automation can be tested.
Absolutely. And one last question before we end the interview today. So, as you are the delivery lead, what is it that you are doing to keep yourself in the game? As you know that the technology is evolving. So, is there any activity that you do to keep yourself updated with the latest RPA knowledge and the competition that's there in the market?
Right. Yeah, great point, because it's always important to stay up to date using the new features that UiPath has brought to the market. It is definitely a priority that we do, and again, that comes back to sort of knowledge sharing. Let's not reinvent the wheel. So if one person takes the time to learn it, it's important to share that knowledge throughout the rest of the company. And so we take knowledge sharing initiatives pretty seriously with inside of Welcomely. And so that's how I mainly stay up to date on my products.
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that this tips definitely help the aspirants that are going to run for the campaign of UiPath MVP 2023. Super excited. And once again, thank you for your time. It has always been great connecting with you. And I hope that we get a chance to work in future. And as always, we are still going to connect in the community. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.